Hey guys,
Hello, everyone.
welcome back to So True podcast. I'm Hannah.
I'm Claire. You guys should know this by now.
Well, if they're new, sometimes people start listening and they don't start at episode 1. Like sometimes
well, they
people,
should.
Well, they should, but they don't always do that.
Fine.
So we're Hannah and Claire. Welcome to So True. This week we are doing ghost stories. We're going to do our last 2 episodes of October are going to be ghost stories. So this is part 1. Next week on actual Halloween will be part 2, which is so crazy. I was just telling Claire right before we started, like I'm already freaked out because of my research, and now I'm scared already, and I'm just like, oh no, why do I do this to myself? Like, I am a wimp. I'm a wimp when it comes to scary things. Like, why do I think that I want to record a ghost stories episode?
Honestly, I'm desensitized now to like ghost stories, but horror movies still a no from me.
Still a
but
no.
honestly, ghost stories don't scare me as much anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they scare me. So, I always suggest just like listen to this when it's the daytime. That's what I suggest.
Yeah. If you're not easily spooked, you're probably fine. A lot of these are pretty spooky, but I feel like they're kind of made, like,
my
in
gosh.
my opinion.
Oh, there was a cat that just ran past the window and it freaked me out.
Ghost cat.
Ghost cat. That was a real kitty. All of my stories are from Reddit today. I will share the user before I read their story. So
Same.
I feel like the Reddit feed that I found them from were paranormal encounters and ghost stories, if you want to go check out those
Okay.
Reddit,
And mine was
Reddit threads.
a lot of mine were from the subreddit No Sleep. That's where like all the spooky stuff is.
Okay, I've heard about that one actually.
And yeah.
Okay. I think I went first last week. So do you want to go
Okay.
first this week?
Sure.
Perfect.
All right, guys, try not to poop your pants. Just kidding. Okay. This one is by Mouthy Housewife on Reddit, and I kind of love that name.
A great name.
It's titled "My Husband Caught Our Ghost on Camera."
Slay. Paparazzi. Please. You're good. Sorry.
Okay. I don't know why I never posted this here before. Let me tell you all about our haunted townhouse. In February 2011, shortly after my husband and I got married, we moved into a 3-bedroom townhouse. It wasn't right away that we realized we weren't its only inhabitants. Our first experience, we didn't even realize until looking back months later. It was late one night, just before midnight. My 3-year-old daughter and 2-year-old son had their own rooms upstairs. My husband's and my room were right at the bottom of the steps. We were heading to bed when we heard my daughter yell, "Get out of my room!" and little feet pitter-patter down the hall to my son's room. So we both went upstairs, me to get after the boy for being out of bed, him to check on the girl. Both kids were sound asleep, and my son's bedroom door was closed, which we would have heard close if it had been open in the first place. We wrote off the experience. My daughter has always yelled in her sleep, and the footsteps could have been from a neighbor. But a few nights later, we started hearing things in the kitchen in the middle of the night. Things rattling around, falling off the counters, drawers opening and closing. At first, we thought it was the kids, but when we'd go out there, no one was there. We checked their beds, and they were sound asleep. The dining table chairs would move in the night, and anything we'd ever leave on the table would be on the floor when we woke up. We'd hear footsteps upstairs, and sometimes we thought we heard whispering. My husband would try to stay up at night in the living room to watch, but on those nights, nothing ever happened. It's because they don't want to be caught.
Ghosts don't want to be caught. They just want to spook. They
On
want to
Sam-
run around and
No, for
cause
real.
cause little spookies, but they don't ever want to be caught. They don't want to be caught on camera.
Mm-mm.
They don't even want to be caught like in person, really. Like they just want you to be aware that they're there.
Yeah, and it might have actually been Maddie Murphy from the Bad Broadcast, but she's like, I think there's a reason ghosts reveal themselves more to kids than anyone else. It's because like they think maybe like kids, like no one will believe the kids as much or something.
Yeah,
or like
people
kids
will
won't,
chalk it up to like kids having like their imagination
Yeah.
or whatever.
or kids won't be able to like adequately explain what happened.
Yeah.
So
I remember like
Yeah.
thinking that was really actually like pretty smart of her when she
Yeah.
said that on one of her episodes recently. I was like, yeah, that actually makes
that
a lot
makes
of
a
sense.
ton of
Yeah.
sense. And also like I feel like a couple of times on Sam and Colby, their footage will be deleted on camera, like, or something will happen as soon as they like turn the camera off.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they spooky.
They spooky.
Anyway, My husband would try to stay up at night in the living room to watch, but on those nights, nothing ever happened. Eventually, he decided to set up a camera. We didn't have any fancy equipment, so he used his HTC phone. He cleared all the memory and left it plugged in and on record from about midnight until whenever it cut off the video. At around 1 a.m., it recorded this. And then she shows a link, and I'll play the video after if we want. It's just like they're weird sounds.
Oh, what?
But I'll continue because there's more. For weeks after this, I made my kids sleep in my room with me. We stayed in the townhouse for lack of other options. We heard these things almost nightly, but nothing bad ever happened. My husband is a skeptic. For the most part, he still is. He swears there has to be a logical explanation for what we saw in this video, but I've had these experiences before we were married. For a while, I thought it was something that had attached itself to my daughter. She's told me since she was 18 months old that there was a man in our house, old house, not the townhouse, named Charming. Prince Charming.
It's Prince Charming from Shrek. Mommy.
Mommy.
Please.
Here's a little more into that particular story. The house we were moving into was small and crudely put together. It seemed as though the original owner had built it himself. The floors, cabinets, and walls were not completely straight. The original hardwood floor was cracked and filled with crumbs and dust. Needless to say, it was creepy right off the bat. Living alone was new to me. I had always lived with my family, friends, or my children's father, but recently I had left him, and me and our 2 small children moved into our own home. The first night I spent there, I tucked my daughter into bed and had an uneasy feeling about the closet in her room.
Ooh.
But I wrote it off as first night jitters and climbed into bed myself. The unsettling feeling of being watched continued with the closet in her room and also the closet in my own room, the basement, and the kitchen right in front of the basement door. Whenever I was in the kitchen, it felt as though someone was standing in that doorway watching me.
Ew, I don't like that.
When I opened either closet, I also felt piercing eyes on me. Going down the basement to do laundry was the worst. I always felt like someone was in the back of the basement near the crawl space watching me, and then it would follow me so close as if it were breathing on my neck.
As if, like, you needed any, like, excuse to not do laundry.
Exactly.
Like, I already don't want to do laundry, but, like, being freaked out, like, laundry's never getting done. We're just buying new clothes.
As if it were breathing on my neck, up the stairs until I shut the door. Still, I justified it, telling myself I was just afraid of being alone for the first time. 2 weeks into living there, my 18-month-old daughter at the time told me she was afraid of the man in the kitchen. She pointed to him and said his name was Charming and that he lived in the basement.
Ooh.
Weeks later, on the drive home from my parents' house, she asked me if we were going back to his house. I told her we were going back to our house. She said, no, that's his house. At this point, nothing strange had happened. No swinging cupboards or doors left open, just eerie, uncomfortable feelings. But that night when I tucked her into bed and turned on her radio, like I always do, the volume was so loud it startled me, and instead of music, it was a deep, rough male voice.
No.
That was actually scary.
No. I just got goosebumps all over.
Demonic almost. I listened for a moment, but I couldn't understand what it was saying, as if it was in another language.
Ooh.
I quickly turned the radio to another station and spent the rest of the night trying to justify the voice. Maybe it was a different electronic communication device getting its radio signal mixed up. After that, nothing else happened for months. My husband, boyfriend at the time, was staying with us for a while, and I had explained a little bit about Charming and the things that I felt but never believed. The things that I felt, but he never believed in any of that stuff anyways. Weeks after, I came home from work and he was outside waiting in the driveway. He said he didn't feel comfortable going back in alone. My bedroom door never stayed open. It didn't close all the way, but it swung back and stayed half open. I'm sure it was because the house was so lopsided. So we kept an old boombox radio in front of it to hold it open. He told me he placed the boombox in front of the door, walked through the house, and went outside for about 5 minutes, and when he came back in, the bedroom door was closed all the way and the boombox was on the inside.
Ooh.
Days later, I was in the shower and I heard someone walk past the bathroom door 3 times.
Oh.
Once from the bedroom to the kitchen, then back to the kitchen once more. When I got out of the shower and went into the bedroom where my boyfriend was, twisted up in all the blankets, sound asleep. I shook him awake and asked what he was looking for in the kitchen. He said he hadn't been in the kitchen. He was asleep in bed the whole time.
Ooh.
Later that week, as he was leaving for the store, I watched the car pull out of the driveway and speed down the road. I headed into the basement and was putting laundry into the dryer when I heard footsteps upstairs walk from the front of the house to the back and then again to the front. When I went up there, no one was there. Shortly, my boyfriend returned and I asked him if he had come back and then left again. He said he hadn't.
Oh my gosh.
Throughout the next couple of weeks, we would hear small noises at night. The magnets from the entertainment center cabinets would click together and apart, but not open. The TV turned on a couple of times. There would be footsteps in the attic. Small things that didn't faze me. We tried to take pictures of eerie places around the house to see if maybe something would appear, but to no avail. It wasn't until my boyfriend moved across the state that things started happening again. It was my birthday. My plans got ruined, and I was sitting home alone, sad, with all the lights off. I started hearing this very loud...
Why are you sitting with all the lights off?
I'm guessing maybe just like it's daytime, but it's like the lights are off.
Oh. I'm like thinking it's the middle of the night. Like
yeah, I'm like, why would you...
She's like pitch black.
Or maybe she's in her room, but like all the rest of the lights off are in the house. Who knows? I started hearing this very loud banging sound. At first, I thought it was fireworks because it was July, but the sound was far too loud and close by to be fireworks. I figured out that it was coming from the attic. Nothing too strange ever happened in the attic before, just footsteps every so often, so I was slightly alarmed. That's strange, though, hearing footsteps in the attic.
Yeah.
It's like nothing ever strange happened in the attic
before. But, like, I guess if,
but,
like, they're in that, like, if they are always hearing stuff in that house, that, like, just, like, footsteps above them in the attic is, like, not as scary as compared to, like, some of the other things.
It sounded like a hammer banging on wood. After a few minutes, the banging stopped, and it sounded as if something large and heavy was being dragged across the floor of the attic to the opposite side of the house.
Oh my gosh.
Moments later, footsteps walked from that side of the attic back to the side where the banging had been. The process started again. Banging, dragging, footsteps again and again. I went outside and called a friend over, but by the time she got there, it had stopped. Of course. A week or so after that, I was lying in bed alone, and I felt like something was standing close to my bed. It has never been in my room when I have been in bed before. It was probably the creepiest moment out of all things that had happened during that year and a half. That was also the last. I moved out of the house 2 months later. I've been back a couple of times. No one lives there still, and during the day you can look and see in all the windows through cracks in the shade. At night, if you look in from the side of the living room, you can see a light flickering like a flame from under the door of what used to be my kid's room. And then it just ends there.
Weird.
Do you want to hear the video?
No, I actually really don't. It's
basically
so
just...
good.
Also, I don't know how I would play it. But basically, it's just like things are literally just like being like dropped from bookshelves. And like things are just moving on its own. Like... It's so creepy.
Maybe just we can include it in like the show notes.
Yeah,
like, a link
we'll do
to
that
it if you guys want to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm so good.
I can't with haunted houses like that.
Well, what's crazy is that like, because she started off by talking about their townhouse, and then like it was the house before that with
it's like was something maybe following her?
I don't like, are some people just like more prone to it or
maybe
what? Because like, I mean, knock on wood, like I feel like I've never had anything like spooky happen really to me. Like I've never, but like some people just like, it feels like they are followed around by it, you know?
I don't know, maybe
Also, I
depends on how open you are to it.
The like the entity being called charming, like why is that so creepy? Because like charming, like if somebody's like charming, it means like that they're charismatic and like people like them and like they're really they're really likable, but like ew, like
and a kid's like, his name's Charming. You can imagine like a man being like, hi, I'm charming, and
you're like,
girl.
You're not charming, you're scary.
Get out.
Yeah, I don't like that. That was spooks.
Yeah.
That was really spook. Okay. All right. My first one's kind of short.
The rest of mine are short. That was probably the longest one.
This one is from Round Rap 4941 from Reddit. And the title is Black Figure Crawling Towards Me.
No.
I don't like that. I have been living in my house now for a little over 3 months. From the day me and my husband moved in, I would always see a black shadow out of the corner of my eye. I was 7 months pregnant when we moved in, and I was super eager to set up the nursery. Well, as soon as the crib and everything was in the nursery, I would always see the black figure entering the nursery. Nope, no thank you. And I always knew that black shadows are mostly never a good entity, so I ignored it and always acted like I didn't see anything. My husband is also not the type of person who believes in the paranormal, So I just always kept things to myself. Things didn't get bad until I gave birth to my son. Now, whatever it is mimics his cries, and my husband, who never believed, is also starting to hear it. We both just ignore it, but we always share a look. But tonight was the first time where I couldn't ignore it. I have been struggling with postpartum depression, and I decided to just take a nice relaxing shower while my husband and son were both asleep. The whole time I was in the shower, I felt like eyes were on me. When I got out, I felt better and decided to wash some bottles. As I'm washing bottles, I felt something behind me touch my back. I just assumed it was my husband, but then I saw something black on the ground crawling towards me.
No.
I immediately
way.
jumped back and it was gone. I ran into our bedroom and woke my husband up freaking out. He told me it was probably just from my lack of sleep and to go to bed, but I know what I saw and now I'm definitely not sleeping tonight. The whole like touching the back too.
And looking over and something's like crawling on the floor.
Crawling is so scary. No, but like the touching the back, I also like on one of the recent Sam and Colby videos I watched on YouTube, they talked about like one of their friends who's in a lot of their videos, Seth, he got an attachment and he said like when they were doing the seance and when he got the attachment, like he felt it start in his back, like, and that apparently like attachments, like a lot of times like people report it as like starting like they start in the back. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That's weird.
Which like your spine is like your control center of like your entire body.
Exactly.
So it kind of like makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
But like, ew. I know. So freaking scary.
Try to touch me, ghost.
Try
to kick your ass.
I'll be throwing hands. Left a right hook, left hook, uppercut.
Crawling on the floor, I'm gonna stomp you on your
Yeah, literally curb stomp. Curb stomp the entity.
Get the hell out.
That's so scary. Oh my gosh, no chance. No chance.
Okay, this one is called When a Ghost Saved My Life, and it's by a deleted user on Reddit, so I can't really give credit, but yeah. Okay, it says, well, this is the first time I have actually decided to post one of my own stories. I am by no means a writer, nor do I have any desire to have anyone criticize my story. This is simply a story of one of the encounters I had when I was in my teenage years. I am not sure why, but I have always been that one guy in my group that seems to be the one that always has the craziest shit happen to him. I'm always the one that sees the person walk across the hall in a supposedly empty house, always the one that hears the little kid giggle in another room, and always the guy that just happens to be there when my friends or family encounter this kind of crap for themselves.
Dang, sorry, dude.
Sorry, dude.
Just your cross to bear, I guess.
They seem to think that the spirits follow me around, and they have even labeled me as cursed. But quite honestly, I have never had a bad experience with any spirits, and I personally don't believe they're even capable of harming us. I personally believe that for the most part, spirits are actually friendly and playful. Well, some of them. Anyway, I could go on forever about several different times where I believe I have had direct contact with spirits, but one of my most memorable experiences was the time a spirit actually saved my life. I've always had a very curious mind, especially when I was younger. I especially loved electronics, and even though I had no idea what I was doing, I loved tinkering with these toys every chance I got. I especially loved fixing broken electronics with other people I especially loved fixing broken electronics which other people had deemed to be trash, but to me, these were treasures. I remember one day I was walking home from school, and I noticed a ceiling fan sitting on the curb outside one of my neighbors' homes. Obviously, this fan was useless to them, probably even broken, but seeing as my old ceiling fan had just recently stopped working, I could not resist the urge to take it home and see if it might serve as a replacement ceiling fan for my room. I called over my buddy later that evening as my dad was out for the weekend on a business trip and asked him to help me see about installing it. Now, granted, I had no idea what the hell I was doing, but I did believe I had a basic understanding of how the wires worked, so after about 5 hours of cursing and arguing with each other, we finally managed to get it set onto my ceiling. I turned it on and it actually worked. I thought myself a genius. As it turns out, somewhere along the line of us connecting the wiring together, we must have done something wrong, because I am pretty sure this ceiling fan could have killed me. Backtracking a little, let me first say that I'm pretty sure my house was a haven for spirits. I remember I would wake up many times in the middle of the night only to see a shadow flit across the room, or to hear dinner party din coming from what seemed to be my living room. I'm going to say they hear dinner party noises coming from what seemed to be my living room. Only for me to walk into my living room and have it completely stop the second I walked in. I even distinctly remember an incident of me taking a shower while having a full conversation with who I assumed was my mother standing outside my bathroom door, only to walk outside after the shower to find that my mother had been gone for the past 2 or 3 hours.
Oh my gosh. No.
Oh, that's terrifying.
No.
However, despite these encounters, I was never afraid of ghosts. Back on subject, I remember the night I had installed my ceiling fan was one of the closest encounters to date. Have you ever been asleep and felt, while still asleep, that someone is standing over you? It's almost like you can see their shadow piercing through your eyelids. I remember I was sound asleep that night, but I could tell even while I was asleep that I was being watched. It was really weird, but I did not pay any attention to it and simply did my best to stay asleep. However, I remember that finally a very dark shadow hovered over my body and violently began to shake me.
Ooh.
I woke up to someone yelling at me to wake up. Nobody was there. However, my room was full of smoke. I assume that at some point in the night, my wiring job from the ceiling fan had caused it to start smoking, and it was spinning uncontrollably, causing the smoke to quickly fill my room.
Oh my gosh.
I quickly got up and ran to cut the power switch out before running to wake up my mother. Since the smoke had not yet spread to the outside of my room, I decided it might be best to shut my door to stop it from spreading throughout the house. When I looked back into my room before I shut my door, I knew I saw the figure of a person standing in the smoke, but I did not take the time to pay any attention. Looking back on this moment, I am pretty sure that whatever woke me up that night might have saved my life. If I had not woken up in time to cut the power, my little project might have very well burned down the house, along with me and my mother. Or maybe the figure in the smoke was actually the culprit. Who knows?
That sounds like they, like, whatever
That sounded like it was a warning.
Was, like, trying to, like,
Yeah.
save you. Yeah.
Yeah, because then why would it wake you up if
Yeah.
it was...
Like, because even if it didn't, like, fully catch on fire, you could have died from, like, smoke and
Yeah,
inhalation.
exactly.
So that's really interesting. I actually have a ghost saving life story.
Oh,
in
true?
mind, too.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, that was really good. Okay. This one is from an account called Faralogic, and it doesn't have a title to the story, so we're just going to get right into it.
Okay.
I had an answering machine that would occasionally go off as if someone had pushed the play messages button. The thought maybe it was a glitch, but it wouldn't go off during the day, ever. My dogs didn't react, so I tried to blow it off, but it was creepy AF at 12 a.m. It would always play all the messages on there except for one of the last times. It started playing the first message, which said, "Hello, are you there?" And the recorded message kept going. When I had listened to it earlier. So like earlier it played like the full message.
Oh, okay.
But that night it just played that part and then stopped. So it just played, "Hello, are you there?" No. And then stopped right there. Exactly, precisely, perfectly after asking, "Are you there?" My family got sick of hearing about the haunted machine, so they bought me a new one for my birthday. Different model and everything. And then a couple weeks after I set the new one up, the new one went off at 11 p.m. But this time, someone was actually home and I was yelling to them, "Are you hearing this?" So I finally had a witness. The next day, when I was alone again, I talked to the empty house. I figured it was someone from my past because it was never threatening and my dogs were always chill when it happened. But I said aloud, "I understand you're communicating with me and, well, message received, but it's kind of freaking me out at night. So can you stop?"
For real.
And it never happened again.
Oh,
I have friends that have passed, so it was probably one of them. It was kind of cool having a wild experience like that, especially since it was harmless.
Dang.
That's kind of, I mean,
is
so
kind of
creepy,
funny.
but like, yeah, like, just like,
It's like, okay, I'll stop.
yeah, like, please, I understand you're not like trying to hurt me, but like, I just don't want to be freaked out. So
Yeah.
please stop. They're like, "Oh, my bad." Like, "Oh, I guess I'll go."
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Sweet. This one is called My Dad's Ghost Story, and it's by Marv249 on Reddit.
Okay.
I first heard this story when I was in college. I had come home for winter break, and I remember it was just me and my dad in the house. I was watching some kind of ghost hunters program on TV just for laughs. Was it Ghost Adventures?
Was it Ghost Adventures? Because we love
same.
them.
I don't really believe in that stuff. When you watch the programs on the TV, they're just so obviously fake. They are. Just kidding.
Me believes everything. Like, yeah.
No. Zach Bagans tells the truth
He
always.
does tell the truth.
I'm kidding. It's too hard for me to let go of my preconceptions and just watch and try to get into it. My dad was the same way, so I thought. He didn't seem interested in the paranormal or anything. He was the kind of guy who would scoff at anything supernatural. The program I was watching flipped to a commercial, and I casually got up and found my dad in the kitchen. Sort of out of the blue, I asked him, "Hey, Dad, do you believe in ghosts?" "Yup." His reply was so casual it shocked me. That's such a dad response.
It really is.
Yup.
Yep. And you're like,
Okay.
Can you
But
expand?
like, why? Yeah.
Thank you.
"Really?" I asked, a bit taken aback. "Like, it just doesn't really seem like you." He shrugged his shoulders and mulled over what I had just said. "Yeah," he replied eventually, "but I know ghosts are real. I've met one."
Wait, pause. The like, yeah, he replied eventually is also such a dad
know.
move where it's like silent for like 5 minutes and you're like, okay, they don't want to talk. And then like, then they like finally respond. They're like, yeah.
Right.
And you're like, oh,
And it might take them like exiting the room and then coming back.
literally, that's such a dad move.
That's what
At
our
least
dad
like
does.
our dad. Yeah. Our dad and like his dad, like our grandpa, they are both
It's
like
so
that.
delayed. You won't get an answer until maybe like 15
No,
minutes.
like sometimes you've forgotten that you even brought it up and then they
Yeah.
respond and you're like,
wait,
what are we
you saying?
talking
Yeah.
about?
I can't. It's so funny.
It's like they have to think it over for a minute. That's so funny.
Okay. Upon hearing this statement, I had to know the story. You see, my dad is like me. My dad is like me. He likes to tell stories. I could retell most of his stories from memory just because he would tell them so frequently to anyone who would listen. Yet here was a story I had never heard of an event that changed my dad's life. To this day, I don't know if I believe it or not, but when someone who is so influential in your life, someone who seems so logical and so down to earth, tells you something like this, it calls into question what you believe and why. Though he never brings it up, when I talk to him about it, he swears it's completely true, no exaggeration, and no doubt in his mind about what happened. So here it is, told from his point of view. It was back in the house in Tacoma where you grew up until you were about four. So this is his dad telling it.
Okay.
My parents still lived in the house, but I was going to college. I was back visiting them for a weekend. I was just over at Tacoma Community College, so it wasn't far away. I came back often to visit and get a home-cooked meal. I remember that I was sitting down for dinner with my parents, just the three of us. It was in the late spring, early summer season, so it hadn't really gotten dark yet. We were talking like normal when the phone rang in the kitchen. My mom got up and answered the phone, leaving my dad and me in the room together alone. After a short while, she called my dad into the kitchen as well. "Leo, can you come in here for a minute?" I remember she seemed worried. Her voice was shaking a bit. My dad wiped his face, got up, and joined my mom in the kitchen. They weren't in there for long, but they were talking quietly, and it felt strange. After a few moments, they came out of the kitchen. They had their coats on now. "Something's come up and we have to go out for a bit," my mom said. "There's dessert in the fridge, so help yourself. Don't worry about the dishes. I'll wash them when we get back." My dad said nothing, but I could tell from his face that it was serious. My mom looked genuinely worried. They were out the door in a flash, and I was left to finish my dinner at the table. I cleared the table and washed my plate, despite my mom's instructions. Then I went into the main room to read. I sat down on the sofa, opened one of my school books, and began to relax. Hours went by, and my parents still hadn't come back. It was now around 11 o'clock, and I was just about to get ready for bed. I walked up the stairs, making my way to the bathroom when I heard a strange noise. I paused and listened for a while. It was the ceiling. The ceiling was making a slow, drawn-out whining noise. The wood was creaking gently. It wasn't an unusual sound, but there was an unusual rhythm to it that made me uncomfortable and curious. After listening a while, I pulled down the steps to the attic and listened a bit more. I could hear the sound more clearly now, along with a metallic creaking noise. I gathered up my courage and decided to investigate. I climbed the steps. Now I have to say, I wasn't scared. I didn't have an uneasy feeling. Actually, to the contrary, I felt quite comfortable. Even though it was dark and eerie, the energy in the room wasn't foreboding. It felt almost warm and inviting. As I looked around the attic, it quickly became obvious where the sound was coming from. Among the boxes and various other storage was an old rocking chair, one that belonged to my grandmother. It was one of many possessions she had left with us at the house. She was in a nearby home for the elderly and couldn't fit much of her belongings in her room. The rocking chair was gently rocking back and forth, causing the floorboards to creak beneath it. Next to the chair, an old bird cage was displaying a similar behavior. The cage door was gently swinging open and closed, making a quiet metallic creak. I figured there was a draft, and knowing that the sounds would keep me up all night if I didn't put an end to it, I set out in search of the source. I combed the corners of the room, but try as I might, I couldn't find the source of the draft, nor could I feel it myself. There were no windows, and there wasn't much ventilation. It wasn't even windy outside. It was a calm evening. Furthermore, the chair was heavy, as was the birdcage, yet there were other things nearby that weren't disturbed, stacks of paper and the like. After a while, I gave up and looked back at the chair. It was still gently rocking. I walked over to it and rested my hand on the armrest. The chair stopped rocking. Still, I couldn't feel any kind of draft. I lifted my hand and the chair was calm and quiet. But as I turned away, I heard the creaking again.
Oh my gosh.
I turned back and the chair was still rocking. It was really strange, but as I had said before, I wasn't really creeped out. I shrugged it off and walked over to the birdcage. The door was still slowly swinging open and closed. The cage had once housed a parrot belonging to my grandmother, but it had been empty now for some time. I latched the cage shut, figuring I could at least stop this one sound. I made for the steps, but just as I was about halfway down, I heard the metallic creaking again.
Oh
I looked behind me, and the cage door was back to it, swinging open, unlatched, right alongside the chair, which continued rocking as before. Something had caused it to unlatch. I was sure I had latched it properly. In any other circumstance, I would have been scared out of my mind, but for whatever reason, I wasn't. I just didn't feel uneasy. A rocking chair and a birdcage aren't really the harbingers of doom anyway. I descended from the attic with a last glance at the strange behavior and went about my bedtime routine. The creaking continued for a while and I couldn't sleep because of it. I went back downstairs to where I couldn't hear the noise and continued reading. It was a little after midnight when I heard my parents pull into the driveway. They came in and found me reading, and they sat down with me. My mom was crying. They explained to me that they had spent the evening at the hospital where my grandmother had just passed away.
Oh my god.
That's the story as my dad tells it. He believes to this day that before she left this world, his grandmother came home to pay him one last visit.
Oh wow.
Spooky, but kind of interesting.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, kind of an interesting twist.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I'd like when I hear those things where people are like, I don't know why I wasn't freaked out. I just wasn't. I'm like, I would have been so scared. But I'm like, I guess that's true. Like, if you're just like, sometimes you just don't.
If the vibe is good,
The
maybe
vibe
you
is
won't.
good. Yeah, maybe you don't feel creeped out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that one was really nice. This one is so freaking scary. So I'm just warning you. I literally got so freaked out. Okay, so this one is from the user Capacity for Nirvana. And the title is Something Called My Name and Smiled at Me.
Ew.
Hi all, I'm Matt. Almost 10 years ago, I was in a relationship with this guy. I'll call him Craig for anonymity. He claimed he had a spirit that had been following him around since early childhood. According to Craig, it never caused any physical harm. It just clung to him and would occasionally reveal itself in bizarre ways. Craig's family was apparently very aware of this and believed it, claiming to have witnessed numerous bizarre occurrences over the years, all of which happened whenever Craig was around. Honestly, I didn't believe this for a second. Not at all. And because I didn't believe it, it felt like a red flag. Why would he make up something so random and bizarre and share it with me so out of the blue when nothing had warranted it? But being in my early 20s at the time, I chose to ignore it because he was great and seemed so normal otherwise. I suppose I eventually chose to believe that he genuinely believed, which was preferable to the idea that he would maintain such a lie for so long just to unsettle me. Still, I pulled a Dana Scully and reasoned that all strange events he had experienced throughout his life must have had reasonable explanations. One night, Craig was staying over at my place. This was actually the first time we'd ever spent an entire night together. We talked, made future plans, made out, and listened to music. Before we knew it, it was 2 a.m., and this was around the time something really strange happened. We were both sitting on the floor of my bedroom, backs against the far wall opposite my bedroom door, looking for music videos to watch on my laptop when 3 loud, fast knocks came from the door. I was so startled because it was extremely late and the only other person present in the house at the time was my mom, who had went to sleep hours ago and only ever got up to use the bathroom. She certainly never knocked on my door at such a late hour, especially if I had company over. I silently questioned if I had imagined the knocks because it was late and I was feeling pretty tired. But no, because when I had looked over at Craig, he was also looking at the door. This is the part where I imagine a lot of readers will decide this story is fake, but hey, I'm going to stay true to my experience, so here goes. Right before I'm about to call out to my mom, I hear a very angry male voice call my name, similar to how an angry father might shout at their child for breaking something valuable. It took Craig and I several minutes to finally muster up the courage to stand and creep over to the door. Before that, we'd comically stayed pressed against the wall, silently staring at the door and occasionally glancing at each other. I pressed my ear against the door and didn't hear anything, so I eventually opened it, but not before retrieving a golf club from my closet and saw nothing. Just a normal dark hallway. Craig and I proceeded to check every spot in the house, even opening closet doors, and found nothing. While we did this, I remember feeling like eyes were burning into me as if someone was angrily watching and judging my every move. It had given me goosebumps because we didn't find anyone. I had shrugged away that feeling. When Craig and I got into bed shortly after, I expressed feeling very creeped out, naturally. Craig nonchalantly replied something to the effect of, "I told you, I have a spirit that follows me around."
Oh my God.
I had been really unnerved by his reply. He had said it a little too matter-of-factly for my liking. Okay, this is where it gets really scary. Fast forward several weeks when Craig is sleeping over at my place again. We were hanging out in the kitchen shortly after midnight when Craig received a call from his sister. He decided to step out into the backyard for the call. It's worth noting that the backyard connected to the kitchen via a large sliding glass door, so I could see him at all times, so long as I remained in the kitchen and he stayed by the door. It's also worth noting that the kitchen sink had a large window directly above it, a window that looked out to the side of the house. I mention this because I decided to wash dishes while Craig took the call. While washing dishes, I alternated between looking out the window in front of me and glancing to my right, where I could see Craig leaning against the glass door as he conversed with his sister. When I got to a particularly dirty dish, I stopped looking out the window and to my right so I could focus on getting the dish clean. When I achieved this, I looked right up. Oh my gosh. I looked back up at the window and immediately took a couple steps back. Standing right outside the window was Craig, who was now smiling at me. I don't mean an ordinary smile. I'm talking a highly exaggerated grin with lots of teeth showing, eyes blown wide open.
Ew.
If you've ever seen the recent horror movie Smile, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It was very similar to that. After I collected myself, I laughed and shook my head at Craig before gesturing at him to knock it off and come back inside. But he stayed completely motionless, eyes still burning into mine, his grin never faltering. He didn't even blink. After another 10 seconds or so went by, I began feeling very unsettled. Mind you, I had still been under the impression that he was just trying to make me feel uncomfortable via his version of a joke, so I was mostly unnerved that he would commit to the gag for so long, more than anything else. I certainly didn't consider it could be anything else, even after the previous incident. Out of nowhere, while I was still looking directly at Craig through the window, I heard the sliding glass door open from my right. When this happened, I looked away from the window and saw Craig coming back inside the backyard. When I looked back at the window, the smiling Craig was gone. I want to make it crystal clear, unless Craig had secret teleportation powers I didn't know about, there was no way he could have moved from the window to the sliding glass door while I was staring right at him. It would have been impossible. When I told Craig what I just experienced, he said, "I believe you. Something like that has happened before."
Oh my God.
Craig just grabbed my hand and led me to my bedroom. I felt eyes burning into my back the whole way there, up until Craig shut my bedroom door. Even then, after we got into bed, I could still sense something standing on the other side of the door. We split up not long after due to something unrelated, believe it or not, and nothing strange has happened since, almost a full decade later. I never feel like I'm being watched, nor have I ever seen anything strange. If you've read this far, thanks, and I would love to get some thoughts. I've had other bizarre experiences, all of which occurred prior to meeting Craig, but nothing that was ever so blatant. I'll admit I'm still somewhat of a skeptic, but whenever I try to come up with a reasonable explanation for the above experiences, I always come up empty. I typically forget about these encounters, but this time of the year naturally brings the memories back, even though they happened at a completely different time of the year.
That would forever haunt me.
Oh,
I don't know how I could ever forget.
Gave me like full body chills.
Not
like,
I can't with like the demonic smiling. No,
like so scary.
Well, it makes you wonder what happened to Craig that like gave him an attachment.
Why does Craig have this attachment?
Yeah, like what happened? I want to know.
Yeah, I'm like, Craig, have you tried like saging yourself?
Craig, why are you just like
why
this
are you
is fine?
So chill about that.
He's like the dog in the house when it's burning, and it
literally
says, "This is fine.
This is
like,
fine."
No, Craig, you need to go
it's
see
not
someone.
Fine. Yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
that one literally freaked me out so bad. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, if my partner had something attached to him, I'm like, you better get rid of that or we're breaking up because I don't want to be around you and your haunted pet.
Stop bringing haunted things around me.
Yeah.
Gross.
Jeez.
Yeah, crazy, huh?
Oof.
Okay.
Well, this one's kind of interesting. It's not super scary, but I thought it was pretty cool. So this subreddit was from people who work in like nursing homes and have had like kind of crazy experiences.
Okay.
It's by Bubbly Pessimist on Reddit.
Oh, great.
It was my second night with this patient in his late 80s. He was terminally ill and was leaving for home hospice. In the middle of the night, I go to do vitals and he's talking out loud in his sleep and fidgeting. He hadn't done it the night before. I woke him up and asked what he was dreaming about. He told me he was dreaming about being with his friends when he was younger, such as going to the bar and partying. He said it was some of his favorite times in his life. I thought that he must have had a great dream and left when I finished his care. A couple hours later, I had left with a coworker to pick up a patient. When I returned, all of my coworkers were freaking out, even our senior nurses. My patient was on portable video because he could be forgetful at times. On the camera, they had witnessed multiple orbs shooting through the room that had looked similar to shooting stars.
Whoa.
We get that from time to time, but they said that there was a crazy amount to the point where the room looked like it was glowing. Some coworkers even went in to check. When they did, the video person said they'd disappear, then return when staff left. By the time I returned, the orbs had just stopped. About 15 to 30 minutes later, my patient wakes up and decides to get up from the bed. I went in there and thought it was weird for him because he didn't really do that the night prior. I ask him where he's going. He points to an area behind me and says that his friends are here and want to play cards with him. Oh. My coworker who was with me paled. I just said that they should play cards when it was a little later and tucked him into bed. I thought that this whole situation was pretty wholesome. My coworkers thought I was nuts. Haha. I was like, his friends just wanted to stop by and say hi.
Oh, yeah. See, that's kind of sweet.
That is kind of cute.
Like, yeah, like the I don't know, the orbs don't freak me out as much. Like, he's just old. His friends are like, hey, bud.
Oh, that's so cute. Company. I hope my friends
they just like want to go play cards or like come hang out. Like,
the fact that like they could see through the video that it was like lit up and like glowing, crazy. That's insane to me.
That's crazy.
That one was cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Okay, this one is my ghost saves human story.
Okay.
It's from Nobody-Nowhere 26 and the title is Grandma Saved Me from the Grave. I had just gotten my license at age 16. I'm 28 now and was on my way to my wait, sorry. Let me start over. Grandma saved me from the grave. I had just gotten my license at age 16. I'm 28 now and was on my way to my god-awful after-school job in the next little town over from ours. I was still brand new to driving and was scared of everything when behind the wheel. I came to one of the only four-way stoplights in town and was the first one at the white line. I sat patiently for the light to turn green, probably fiddled with the radio a little bit, just waiting for the signal change. The light changed and I took my foot off the brake and was about to accelerate. Now, everybody's grandparents had something they were known for saying, their little catchphrases. My great-grandmother, who had passed 2 years earlier, would holler, "Hold your horses," when me and my siblings/cousins got rowdy or impatient. That's what I heard just as I took my foot off the brake. "Hold your horses!" Just as clear as if she was sitting next to me. It scared the shiz out of me, so I slammed my foot back down on the brake, and not a second later, an 18-wheeler came barreling through the intersection, having run the red light.
Oh my god!
I would have been flat Stanley had it not been for Nana riding shotgun that day.
Damn.
Nana was with you, dude.
I've heard stories like that where like you should just wait a few seconds before or at least look around before you're going through a green light because you never know who could be running a red light.
There was one time as a kid, and I don't know if it was like the Holy Spirit or if it was just like my own intuition or what. But I was riding my bike up the street, and I just felt like I heard like this little voice in my head, or whether it was maybe just like a thought, like you should get on the sidewalk. And I got on the sidewalk, and like right after, a car came like speeding around the corner, and like really fast. And I remember thinking like, I don't know if they would have been able to stop. Like, I was just a kid, probably like second or third grade, but like I remember it very clearly.
Weird.
Like just a feeling like kind of, where you're like, I don't know if that was my own thought or if that was like a thought placed in my head, but just like hearing like you should get on the sidewalk, and then that happening. So who knows?
That's really scary.
Yeah.
I remember something similar happened to Mom, and when Paul was a baby in the stroller, that she was walking him down the street or something. Yeah. And like a car, like a Jeep, like full of like some kids and stuff, like came speeding around the corner, like probably would have hit her,
like
and
right
killed
at
them both.
Yeah.
But I don't know what happened. I don't know if they just like somehow miraculously missed.
I think from what I remember Mom telling me about that story was like she closed her eyes and kind of like braced, like not knowing what to do, and then all of a sudden like the car was just past them and they were fine. Like, I can't remember exactly what happened there, but yeah, it was something crazy where she's like, I felt like we should have gotten hit.
Weird.
Yeah. I don't
Crazy.
know. There are just certain things, like, it's just not your
Maybe
not your time to go.
I don't
and
know.
like, yeah, whatever it is. It's
Okay.
crazy.
This one is, I love this one. Okay. This one is titled, How About a Ghost Story with a Little Bit of Proof?
Oh.
And it's by, I'm going to say it's, first word is Chin, second word is Quentiz28 on Reddit.
Oh, okay.
My mother was pregnant with me, and I was going to be my parents' first child. They lived in a house that was a decent size in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, but my dad was a carpenter, so he decided to put an addition onto the house before I was born to make more room in case they wanted more children down the road. Being a carpenter, my dad had a lot of tools and basically did the whole addition by himself. One day, while working on the addition, he noticed that he was missing a tool that he knew was there the day before. He looked all over the house for it, but it was nowhere to be found, so he ended up just buying a new one at the hardware store. The next day, the same exact thing happened. A tool went missing, and he bought a new one. This went on for a long time. A screwdriver here, a hammer here. One by one, they would all start disappearing day after day with no real explanation. When I was born, my dad had basically replaced every tool he owned with a new one by the time the addition was finally done. Part 1 of the weird stuff that happened. After my mom gave birth to me and was good to leave the hospital, my parents came home to put me in my brand new room that my dad had just built. Shockingly, every tool that my dad had misplaced was lying in the threshold to my room, arranged in order from smallest to largest.
What?
No signs of damage to any of them. They were exactly like they were the day that they went missing. No tools were unaccounted for. Now, you might think that maybe someone was stealing them, and when they saw that my dad was building a room for a newborn baby, they had a guilt trip and returned them. But it gets weirder. This whole incident freaked my parents out, and they would tell the story to friends, relatives, etc. After telling it to my aunt, she suggested that my parents talk to her friend who claims that she can talk to spirits. Being skeptical about the whole spiritual thing, my parents reluctantly agreed to have the spirit lady, as my mom calls her, come by. As soon as she entered the house, she knew that something or someone was there, As soon as she entered the house, she knew that something or someone was there, and she told my parents. In her own way, she communicated with the spirit and identified him as Cato, a runaway slave from the South who made his way up to Connecticut to start a new life.
Oh.
She said that he built this house himself and still resides in it, but is friendly. Apparently, Cato was upset that my dad was adding to the house that he built and was trying to stop him by stealing his tools.
Oh.
But when he figured out that my dad was building it to make room for a child, he understood and returned the tools.
Oh.
Cato kind of became a fun excuse for us in the family anytime the remote went missing or something fell off the counter. Cato didn't want you to change the channel, my mom would say. It was kind of freaky, but nothing paranormal ever happened after the tool incident. It was kind of cool to think that we had a friendly ghost in the house watching over us. We moved out of that house in 1997 to the Boston area, not knowing whether or not the story about Cato was true. However, 10 years after moving out in 2007, one of my family members, still living in the Sandy Hook area, called to inform us that there was an archaeological study done in my old city about former slave houses, and sure enough, my house was chosen to be part of it. She sent us the reports, and it all made us take a step back. They found an X on part of the chimney base, which traces back to homes built by former slaves, as well as a shoe under kitchen floorboards, which was believed to prevent evil from entering the house. Even more striking was that the historians believed the house to be built by a man by the name of Cato Freedom, a runaway slave. I haven't been back by that house since I left, but I would love to have the chance to go check it out.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, that's so interesting.
That's so interesting. I love that he was like,
oh shoot, sorry, man.
Stop messing with my house. And then he's like, oh wait, like you're just welcoming a baby. Like, sorry. And then like lines up the tools perfectly. That's actually kind of crazy.
It's kind of wholesome.
Yeah, I kind of like it. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, this one is called Haunted School, and it's by, I want to say it's Momo Becca, M-O-W, that would be Mo, right? Momo Becca?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so Haunted School. I teach kindergarten in a building that is over 100 years old, built in 1907, and is on the National Register of Historic Places. My classroom is on the second of 4 levels. We don't use the top level at all because it is in total disrepair. Sometimes the auto flush toilet flushes on its own, sometimes things fall off shelves, sometimes the lights flicker for just a moment. I figured it's an old building, that's why. Anyway, last year around parent-teacher conference time, I sent home a little questionnaire for parents asking what they would like to discuss at the conference. One of the questions was, what friends from school does your child talk about at home? Social and friendship skills are a big part of kindergarten, so that's why I ask. 7 of the 20 children in the class had Alex listed as a friend. There is no Alex in our entire school. I asked them who Alex was. Imaginary friends are common in young children, but for them all to have the same name was a little unsettling. They said things like, the quiet boy. He sits on the stool by the bookshelf always. He cries a lot. I figured it was just their imaginations and they talk to each other about it. Then, yesterday, we were doing a tidy up of the classroom. I moved some furniture around. One of the kids came up to me and said, Mrs. Momo, Alex wants you to put the stool back by the bookshelf so he can look out the window when you read stories. That's the end of it.
Oh my god.
Just a little boy that's hanging around.
It makes you wonder, like, what happened?
Yeah,
like,
you're
why
is
are you
he
choosing to come
there?
back to the school?
What happened to you, bud? Like, and like he just wants to like listen to the stories
With the other kids? That's kind of sad.
I know. Like then he's like, why? And they said like he sits on the stool and he cries a lot. Like, why is he? Why are you?
Why are you crying, ghost boy?
Ghost boy. Also, I thought it was crazy when she said there's no Alex in our entire school. I'm like, that's a pretty common name. How's there no Alex from K to 5th grade? However,
their names are all Jimmy.
They're Jimmy and Stuart.
Jimmy, Stuart, Bob, Franklin.
Perfect.
I feel like that was the dumbest joke.
That's great. Love it.
Anyway.
Okay,
I have one more.
I also have one more. So
okay, sweet. Perfect. Okay, this one is, don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's pronounced Floytasangan on Reddit.
That's
spelled
perfect.
Floy and then Tess and then Angin or something. Anyway. Okay. It says, the following is shamelessly stolen from a friend's experience shared on a Halloween ghost hunt because we weren't having any luck ourselves. Okay, so this is the friend's story. This friend and a few of his college buddies were going on a similar ghost hunt themselves and had heard about some graveyard where children murdered by their mother had been buried.
Ooh.
The graveyard was located off the main road, so my friend parked his car on the side of the road, and the group, 5 to 7 people, I believe, got out and followed the small path through the woods for a couple minutes to get to the graveyard. Once there, nothing exciting happened for the first 10 minutes or so, and they had tried everything the website or whatever they heard the story told them to do, with nothing resulting. They got bored and, being typical inebriated college kids, started taunting the supposed ghost of the mother. This continued for a few minutes before they tired and decided to go back to the car as one of the girls had to go to the bathroom. Once they got back to the car, my friend, the sober driver, tried opening the handle without unlocking the car because he hadn't locked it in the first place, but he found it locked. He attributed this to bad memory at the time. The group drove home, laughing and talking like normal. After he had dropped all the others off at their homes, he went back to his own house. He got in at the same time as one of his roommates, who stopped and waited for him to pull in. The roommate had his phone out and shined the light in the window when his friend pulled in as a joke. What he saw was tiny, baby-sized handprints all over the windows. As soon as my friend got out, he went into the house without saying a word to the roommate. The roommate, confused, went back to the car and tried to rub off one of the handprints. They were on the inside of the window.
Whoa.
To this day, my friend will not speak of his drive home after he dropped off his other friends and has since sold the car without ever driving it again.
Whoa.
Little baby.
Not baby hands.
It's inside the car, like with them. Ew.
That's weird.
If there's one thing.
Well, then you're like, why didn't, like, he won't talk about it? Like, the friend that was
yeah, he was like, nope.
Like, just, like, freaked out. That's really weird. You know it's real, like, when somebody doesn't want to talk about it.
Like, nope.
Yeah.
And they just, like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird.
If there's one thing I hate more than a regular baby, it's
a
a ghost baby. Just kidding.
Please. All right, here's my last one. It is by someone called Scooch Down, and the title is The Prankster. First, I swear to you, every word I ever tell you will be true. I will not lie or stretch the truth about this home we loved so much. Here's a little background on the house itself. It will be useful in at least one of the stories I tell later. We purchased our 153-year-old antique home without a clue to its true history. The documents provided to us showed it was built around 1950. That estimate was off by approximately 80 years. After much research in 3 different counties, I found our home was actually built in 1870.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's old as hell.
The house itself was made from cypress trees, which were felled on the property and milled on site. Shortly after closing, we had to make repairs to the front wall of the home. The beams, crossbeams, and diagonal braces were all massive. They had mortise and tenon joints that were held in place with wood spikes called tree nails. We had no idea what we had purchased until we opened that wall. None. We thought we had purchased just an old house, not an antique house, because the house we saw on the outside was a simple 1950s era cottage style home which had been badly covered in siding. And then to open the wall and discover this amazing construction within, that's what set me on the path of research to find out everything I could about the house and its occupants. So let's talk about the first one I encountered, the prankster. The very day we moved in, it started. We still had one more load of odds and ends left at the old house to pick up, but I was utterly spent. My husband said he'd go get it while I started unpacking some of the things in the living room. I said good deal, and he was gone. I was left completely alone in the house, as it was just me and my husband. No one else lived with us, was helping us move, or was visiting us. I breezed through the first couple of boxes and put the things where they belonged. Then I came to a box of dried and fake floral stuff I really had no use for, so I started placing it on the U-shaped mantel. The fireplace itself was quite large, stood 14 feet, and was built out into the living room, not flush with the wall. It had a very thick, very deep, 3-sided wraparound mantel. There was an ugly dried flower arrangement in a basket I knew I never used, so I placed it on the far right-hand corner of the U shape, so literally up in a corner. Remember that. At that point, one of my little dogs indicated she needed to go outside to pee. I took all 4 chihuahuas out. 4 chihuahuas?
Damn.
Is this Beverly Hills chihuahuas?
Yeah.
When we came back in, I went straight to the treat jar. 3 dogs were facing away from the living room when I handed them their treat, and they laid down to eat it. One dog was facing the living room and began barking as if someone unknown to them had just walked in the house, but the front door was closed. She stood stiff as a board facing the living room, crazy barking. I told her to stop, which she always did upon command. She kept barking, warning type barking. I walked around the perimeter of the house. I checked the inside of the house. All the time she's barking her head off. I was completely freaked out, but I could find nothing. I finally told her to knock it off or I'd put her in her bed. She stopped, but continued to growl. I could feel the hair on my neck stand on end. The electrical charge in the room was palpable. I left the room and went to the master bedroom to go to the bathroom. I washed my face while I was in there, told myself it was nothing, and tried to shake it off. I headed back in to do more unpacking. And when I came back, the ugly flower arrangement was sitting dead center in the middle of the living room floor.
What?
And it couldn't have been one of the dogs. It was like their
No.
chihuahuas, and it was up like high on the mantle.
And if they
in the
knocked it over, it
corner.
would have broken.
Yeah. It wouldn't be in like the center of the room. It would have like been like just on the floor next to the mantle.
Creepy. What? Like destroy that thing? Is it haunted?
Literally, I'm
or-
like, you got that like flower attachment have like, or flower arrangement
Yeah.
have an attachment?
Right.
Like, who knows?
Ooh.
Also, you always know when like the dogs like start acting weird. Like
yeah,
that there's
animals have
something
another
up.
sense.
Yeah.
For sure.
Dogs and kids, man. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
they can.
They
Yeah,
sense
they
it.
sense things that we're not privy to.
Yeah.
For sure.
Anyway, that was my last one.
Dang.
Dang,
This is a spooky
spooky.
episode. These were good though.
These
I
were
liked
good.
them.
I feel like we had a good mix of
Yeah.
like super pretty scary and then some that were just kind of cool.
Yeah.
Some that were a little wholesome. Anyway, come back next week for Ghost Stories Part 2 to wrap up spooky
Yeah.
month October.
Man, I can't believe October has flown by.
It really has.
These past few months have been.
It's
Yeah.
been like so busy lately. I
Yeah.
just am like, I feel like I can't catch up with anything.
Same. I know we had to. I think last episode we were like, "Oh, we have one more episode left," and then we looked at the
And we're like,
October
"Oh."
calendar, and we're like, "Oh,
No, there's 2 more weeks.
Halloween literally falls on a Tuesday."
Yeah, so
then
yay.
last one will fall on Halloween.
All right. Okay, guys, see you next Tuesday.
Bye.